Humanity has pointed telescopes toward the heavens, waiting for the faintest sign that we are not alone, hoping for a message written in light or sound from some distant star. And yet, when it finally came, it was not from a distant galaxy or a hidden civilization. It came from an interstellar object cutting straight through our solar system, a visitor known as 3I Atlas. For months, astronomers had been baffled by its emerald glow, its pulses of energy, and its defiance of everything we thought we knew about comets. But now, the mystery has deepened beyond imagination. Instruments across the world have confirmed that Atlas is not radiating randomly. It is broadcasting, sending directed pulses of energy aimed straight at Mars. And in an event that has left even the most skeptical scientists speechless, Mars itself has responded. For the first time in human history, we are witnessing what looks like a dialogue between a wandering object from beyond the stars and a neighboring planet that we thought was dead and silent. And if this is true, then our understanding of the universe, of Mars, and of our place in it will never be the same again. It began quietly, as many discoveries do, with data that seemed too strange to be taken seriously. Astronomers already knew that Atlas pulsed in regular intervals, its emerald glow brightening and dimming every 173 minutes with a rhythm so precise it could not be dismissed as coincidence. But then came a pulse that was different. It was not scattered outward like the others, diffusing into the void, but focused, compressed into a beam aimed directly at Mars. Orbiters circling the red planet immediately registered the spike, recording bursts of radiation strong enough to penetrate the thin Martian atmosphere and light it up in shimmering green for several minutes. At first, it was dismissed as an anomaly, a quirk of angles, a flare of solar interference. But when it happened again, exactly the same duration, exactly the same direction, the same power, the conclusion was inescapable. Atlas was sending a message. It was not random, it was not blind, it was directed. For the first time, humanity had evidence that an interstellar visitor had chosen a target for its signal, and it had chosen Mars. The response came not in days or weeks, but almost immediately. Satellites orbiting Mars began to record electromagnetic bursts rising from the planet itself, pulses that matched Atlas's frequency but carried variations, as if not simply reflecting the original signal, but transforming it. Scientists first thought these were echoes, natural reverberations bouncing through Mars's thin magnetosphere. But closer analysis showed otherwise. The pulses were delayed by precise intervals, shifted slightly in frequency, structured in a way that suggested intentional modulation. Even more startling, Earth-based telescopes began detecting faint harmonics bouncing back across space, as if Mars were amplifying the signal and returning it. To those who studied the data, it was as though Atlas had sent a question and Mars had answered in kind, repeating the language in its own voice. Suddenly, a world long thought to be barren and silent had become a participant in an interplanetary dialogue, its thin skies and dusty ground now vibrating with the energy of a message that came from beyond the stars. The mystery deepened when seismic monitors on Mars, left behind by missions long past, began to register activity unlike anything recorded before. The tremors were not chaotic but rhythmic, perfectly synchronized with the pulses from Atlas. These vibrations echoed deep into the planet's mantle, as if the very crust of Mars had become a resonant instrument, singing in harmony with the interstellar visitor. Even more unsettling, the frequencies mapped onto geometric shapes when translated into spectrograms, spirals, hexagons, and triangles identical to the luminous patterns astronomers had already observed in Atlas's glowing coma. This was not coincidence. The red planet was not merely reflecting energy, it was answering with its own voice, speaking through the ground itself. For some researchers, this hinted at the possibility that something deep beneath the Martian surface, an ancient structure, a buried ocean, or even a long-dormant system, had been activated by Atlas's call. Others went further, suggesting that Mars itself was alive in ways we had never imagined, capable of resonating like a vast organism stirred by a signal from the stars. Whatever the truth, it was undeniable. Mars was responding. The implications of the exchange could not be contained. As Atlas pulsed and Mars responded, Earth itself began to feel the resonance. Radio telescopes around the globe picked up faint harmonics identical to the Martian echoes. patterns embedded in the static that matched Atlas's signal but were transformed by the red planet's response. Independent researchers posted their findings online, spectrograms showing eerie geometries hidden in the bursts, only to see their accounts vanish mysteriously hours later. Governments issued no explanations. NASA remained silent. And yet the truth spread. Humanity was no longer a bystander. We were listening in on a cosmic dialogue, a conversation not meant for us but unfolding in plain sight. And as the patterns grew stronger, as Mars's signals became clearer, the haunting realization took hold. Whatever Atlas had asked, Mars had answered. And the echoes of that exchange were already reaching Earth. Phobos and Deimos, the two small moons of Mars, had always been considered little more than captured asteroids, lifeless rocks circling a barren world. But when Atlas's signal reached Mars and the planet began to answer, something extraordinary happened. Instruments aboard orbiters detected that Phobos was reflecting bursts of electromagnetic radiation perfectly synchronized with Mars's pulses, like a relay node amplifying the exchange. Deimos, fainter and further out, responded differently, glowing intermittently with an emerald sheen that telescopes on Earth captured as flashes against the black of space. These were not mere reflections of sunlight. They were timed, structured, deliberate. The moons, long thought irrelevant, had suddenly become active participants in the dialogue. Scientists scrambled to explain how such small, inert bodies could interact with the signal, but the simplest explanation was also the most unsettling. The entire Martian system had been awakened, as if every rock and every orbiting body had been waiting for the call from Atlas. At first, rovers on Mars seemed unaffected, continuing their daily tasks of measuring dust, capturing images, and transmitting data. But as the pulses intensified, one by one, their feeds began to fail. The first sent corrupted files filled with streaks of green static. Another transmitted a final blurred image of the horizon illuminated by an unnatural glow before going offline. Engineers on Earth fought to regain control, sending command after command, but the machines remained silent. Then came the most disturbing detail. One rover transmitted a single burst of data moments before shutting down, a stream of binary code that when decoded formed repeating prime numbers, identical to the patterns hidden in Atlas's pulses. The conclusion was impossible to ignore. The rovers had not malfunctioned randomly. They had been pulled into the resonance, compelled to echo the same mathematical signature that linked Atlas and Mars. Our mechanical explorers had, in their final moments, become part of the signal. Soon after the rovers went silent, Earth itself began to intercept strange signals carried on the interplanetary background noise. Radio telescopes in Australia, South Africa, and Chile picked up faint bursts that matched both Atlas's frequency and the Martian echoes. At first they appeared as static, but careful analysis revealed sequences repeating in prime numbers, just like those transmitted by the rovers. More disturbing was the discovery that the signals grew stronger when Mars rotated certain regions into view, as though specific parts of the Martian surface were acting as transmission nodes. Independent astronomers rushed to publish their findings, only for their work to vanish hours later from servers, websites, and forums. Still, enough evidence remained to confirm the unimaginable. The dialogue between Atlas and Mars was no longer confined to space. It had reached Earth. And if we could hear it, then perhaps, just perhaps, it was meant for us to. As the dialogue intensified, the skies themselves became a canvas for Atlas's message. Observers reported seeing shimmering patterns ripple across the Martian atmosphere, visible even through telescopes on Earth. Spirals, lattices, and hexagonal grids shimmered like vast, fleeting constellations etched in light, appearing for minutes before fading away. Satellite imagery confirmed the displays, showing them aligned precisely with the rhythm of the pulses exchanged between Atlas and Mars. The geometries were not random. They carried ratios that matched mathematical constants, golden spirals, and even structural symmetries found in architecture across human civilizations. The implication was haunting. Atlas's message, amplified by Mars, was now being broadcast visually as well as electromagnetically, written across the skies in symbols that spoke a universal language. Humanity, once a passive observer, was now staring at signs that seemed designed to be recognized, not just by Mars, but by us. and the realization spread like wildfire. This was no accident of physics. It was communication. As the signals intensified, seismic activity on Mars reached levels never before recorded. What had once been a silent, frozen world suddenly pulsed with rhythmic quakes that rippled across its crust, timed perfectly with the transmissions from Atlas. Scientists realized these tremors weren't random shifts in rock, but structured vibrations traveling deep into the mantle, as though the planet itself had become a resonant instrument amplifying the interstellar signal. The most shocking discovery came when spectrograms of the seismic waves were translated into visual data. The patterns matched the geometric symbols long observed in Atlas's emerald glow, spirals, triangles, and hexagons etched into the heartbeat of Mars. For the first time, experts were forced to consider a possibility that bordered on the unthinkable. Mars was not simply echoing Atlas's call. It was participating, shaping the signal with its own geological voice. Something beneath its crust had been activated, and the red planet was no longer just a passive target. It was awake. Then came the phenomenon visible not only through telescopes, but to the human eye. Astronomers and amateur stargazers alike began reporting faint emerald glows rising above Mars, shimmering like auroras but far too structured to be natural. These luminous veils spread across the Martian atmosphere, curling into vast arcs of light visible from Earth with even modest equipment. The glow wasn't constant. It pulsed in tandem with Atlas's transmissions, as though each burst of energy painted a new streak across the planet's sky. For hours, the red planet seemed cloaked in a veil of emerald fire, a visual testament to the connection it now shared with the interstellar object. While some dismissed the phenomenon as atmospheric ionization, others pointed out its impossible precision. The auroras bent themselves into recognizable forms, concentric circles, ladder-like rungs, spirals twisting into infinity. It was as if the sky itself had become a screen, and Mars was projecting back the signal for anyone watching. As humanity stared in awe at Mars's emerald crown, a quieter, more terrifying effect began unfolding here on Earth. Radio telescopes, radar installations, even civilian communications arrays started experiencing sudden blackouts precisely timed with the pulses exchanged between Atlas and Mars. Entire data streams collapsed into static before rebooting minutes later, leaving only fragments of corrupted files filled with streaks of green noise. Engineers described the disruptions as unlike any interference they had ever encountered, spreading across multiple frequencies as if deliberately designed to overwhelm. What made it worse was the pattern. Each blackout was preceded by a faint echo of the Martian resonance, as though the planet's response was bleeding across space and infecting our systems. The chilling realization spread quickly. If Earth's instruments were now reacting to the exchange, then we were no longer outside observers. We had become part of the resonance. And the question no one dared to ask aloud was, what if our machines weren't failing at random? What if they were being drawn into the signal, just as the Martian rovers had been before? When fragments of data from the interrupted transmissions were finally reconstructed, what they revealed sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Buried in the noise of the pulses was a structure too precise to be natural. Sequences of prime numbers, repeating ratios, and harmonics that mirrored not only geometry, but also languages of logic humanity itself had developed. Mathematicians confirmed that the embedded codes resembled the kind of universal markers scientists have long theorized an intelligent civilization might use to communicate. The resonance wasn't just energy, it was information. But what unsettled everyone most was where the variations came from. The original pulse belonged to Atlas, but the modulation, the alterations that turned static into structured code, came from Mars. The red planet was not merely reflecting a message, it was transforming it, answering back with a voice of its own. For the first time in human history, we were witnessing a conversation between a visitor from beyond the stars and a planet within our solar system. And humanity was listening in on a dialogue that was never meant for us. As seismic data from Mars continued to pour in, researchers uncovered something that pushed the mystery to new depths. The rhythmic tremors didn't simply shake the surface, they bounced back from deep within the planet, as though hitting vast, hollow chambers hidden beneath the crust. By mapping the wave reflections, scientists identified patterns suggesting enormous subsurface voids arranged in geometric alignments, structures too ordered to be the result of natural geology. Some claimed these were remnants of ancient volcanic systems, but others insisted the formations looked engineered, like colossal resonant chambers built to amplify signals. The chilling implication was that Mars had not simply become a participant in Atlas's dialogue, it had always been designed for it. A planet that humanity once thought barren and lifeless was suddenly revealing itself as an instrument, tuned to awaken only when the right frequency called across the stars. And now, that call had come. Meanwhile, something strange began happening with Phobos, Mars's innermost moon. Long regarded as a doomed satellite spiraling closer to Mars every century, its descent suddenly accelerated. Tracking stations confirmed that Phobos's orbit was no longer stable. It was subtly adjusting in synchrony with the pulses exchanged between Atlas and Mars. Even more bizarre, high-resolution imagery showed faint glowing fissures across its surface, like veins of emerald light spreading outward from beneath its dusty crust. To some, this was evidence of stress fractures caused by tidal forces. But to others, it looked like activation, as though Phobos was no longer just a rock, but a mechanism coming alive, responding to the same signal Mars now echoed. The idea took root that Phobos, long thought destined to crash into Mars, might actually have been designed for a different purpose entirely, one that was now beginning to unfold before our eyes. While scientists struggled to keep pace with the cascade of anomalies around Mars, Earth itself began experiencing phenomena that defied explanation. In remote locations, deserts, mountaintops, and even oceans, people reported seeing faint green auroras shimmering far from the poles, glowing softly in the night sky where no aurora should exist. These luminous veils pulsed with the same rhythm as Atlas's signal, synchronized with the Martian response. Amateur radio operators captured bursts of static filled with repeating tones, sounds that many described as hauntingly melodic, almost like a cosmic chant. For the first time, humanity wasn't just observing Mars's transformation from afar. We were feeling its effects here on Earth. It was as though the dialogue had spilled across the void, dragging our world into a resonance we could neither control nor escape. And the terrifying thought began to spread. If Mars had answered Atlas, could Earth soon be compelled to do the same? As the anomalies mounted, scholars and historians began revisiting ancient records with a new sense of urgency. Civilizations across Earth, Sumerians, Egyptians, Mayans, had left behind myths of twin stars, green fires in the heavens, and gods descending upon the red world in cycles of destruction and rebirth. At the time, these were dismissed as symbolic stories, metaphors for agricultural cycles or spiritual beliefs. But when cross-referenced with the timing of Atlas's pulses and Mars's responses, the parallels became chillingly precise. Carvings showed twin orbs linked by beams of light. Tablets described a green serpent that whispered to the red planet until it roared awake. Some inscriptions even included geometric symbols identical to those emerging from Atlas's resonance. It seemed less like mythology and more like memory, a record of humanity's ancestors witnessing the same phenomenon thousands of years ago. If true, this meant Atlas's arrival and its dialogue with Mars was not a unique event. It was a cycle, and now it had returned. For months, humanity has watched 3I Atlas defy the laws of nature. It split into two, one fragment targeting the Sun and the other Mars, and from that moment the impossible became undeniable. The pulses, once thought to be random, revealed themselves as signals, directed, deliberate, intelligent. And then came the answer. Mars, the silent red world we believed barren, responded. Through its atmosphere, through its trembling crust, through its moons, it echoed back the call of an interstellar visitor. But this was not just a call and response. It was a dialogue. Seismic waves carved geometry into the heartbeat of Mars. Auroras painted mathematical symbols across its thin skies. Even Phobos shifted in orbit, glowing with fissures of emerald light, as though awakening from a slumber that had lasted for millennia. And as the resonance grew, it reached us. Earth itself began to flicker with echoes, green auroras in places where no auroras should exist, instruments collapsing under interference, whispers of prime numbers and spirals hidden in the static. The dialogue had spilled across the void, and whether we wanted to or not, we had become part of it. The ancient records now look less like myths and more like warnings, memories left behind by civilizations that witnessed the same cycle long before us. They spoke of a serpent of green light that whispered to Mars, of twin fires in the heavens, of awakenings that reshaped worlds. And if those stories are true, then Atlas has not come to our system by chance. It has returned, as it always has, as part of a process older than humanity itself. NASA remains silent, burying data, cutting signals, locking down every trace that leaks. But their silence is an admission. They know the truth, that 3I Atlas is not a comet, not a rogue wanderer, not an accident of the cosmos. It is a messenger, a trigger, a presence that stirs dormant worlds into resonance and forces planets to speak. And now that Mars has answered, the question is no longer whether Atlas is alive. The question is, what comes next? Because if Mars has awakened, and if Earth is already beginning to echo its song, then the cycle has only just begun. Atlas sent the signal. Mars answered back. And now, with each passing pulse, humanity must face the terrifying possibility that the next response will come not from a distant world, but from our own.